There was a man who walked into a room and said nothing. He did not smile at everyone. He did not rush to shake hands. He did not look around, hoping someone would notice him. He just walked in, found a spot, and stood there, like he had been there 1,000 times before. Within 10 minutes, 3 different people had walked over to him. 2 of them were women. One of them left her date to do it. He did not use a line. He did not use a trick. He did not read a book about body language the night before. He just understood something that most men spend their entire lives never figuring out. And today, you are going to learn exactly what that was. My name is not important. What is important is what you are about to hear. Because in the next 20 minutes, everything you think you know about attraction is going to get broken apart, examined, and rebuilt from the ground up using the most dangerous mind in human history. Not a dating coach. Not a therapist. Not some guy with a podcast. Machiavelli, a man who lived over 500 years ago and understood human nature better than anyone walking this earth today. A man who watched kings rise and fall. A man who studied what made people follow, what made people fear, what made people want. And a man who wrote it all down in a way that got him thrown in prison, tortured, and exiled. Because the truth he wrote was too dangerous. Most people who quote Machiavelli have never actually read him. They pull one line, twist it, and use it to sound smart. We are not doing that here. We are going inside his actual thinking. Inside the real principle he discovered, the one that nobody in the attraction space ever talks about, because it is uncomfortable, because it demands something from you that most men are not willing to give. It demands that you change, not your outfit, not your words, not your opener. You Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, and I am quoting him directly here. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Read that again slowly. It is not the situation that gives you power. It is not the clothes, the car, the job title, the Instagram following. It is the man inside all of those things. Because a weak man with a Ferrari is still a weak man, and a strong man with nothing still commands a room. This is the foundation of everything we will talk about today. Machiavelli called it not virtue in the religious sense, not being nice or moral or good. Virtù meant something completely different. It meant inner force, personal power, the quality inside a man that allows him to shape the world around him instead of being shaped by it. And here is the brutal truth. Most men have no virtù, not because they are bad people, not because they are stupid, but because nobody ever told them what it was, or how to build it. They were told to be nice, to be agreeable, to ask how she's doing and listen carefully and split the check evenly, and text back quickly and be available and be consistent and be, above all else, safe. And then they wonder why she looked at them like furniture. Safe is invisible. Safe is forgettable. Safe is the man who does everything right and still ends up alone wondering what he did wrong. What he did wrong was this. He optimized for comfort instead of his own power. Machiavelli watched princes do this same thing with their people. He watched rulers bend over backward, trying to make everyone happy, trying to offend no one, trying to be liked by all sides. And he watched every single one of them lose. He wrote that a prince who tries to avoid all hatred will eventually be destroyed by the very people he tried so hard not to upset. Because people do not respect what bends for them. They respect what stands. Now, here is where this gets interesting. And this is the part that the other channels will never tell you because it does not fit in a clean list of tips. Machiavelli's deadliest attraction principle is not about what you do to her. It is about what you do to yourself first. Before the conversation. Before the approach. Before any words are exchanged. He called it the conquest of fortune. He wrote that fortune, meaning everything outside your control, is like a river. When the weather is calm, it flows gently, and men row their boats without thinking. But when the storm comes, the river floods, destroys, and sweeps everything away. And the men who built nothing to contain it are helpless. But the man who prepared, the man who built the walls, dug the channels, made himself ready before the storm. He controls the flood. Now replace the word fortune with attraction. Attraction is a flood. It is unpredictable, powerful, and it will sweep a weak man away every single time. The nervous voice, the over-explaining, the checking his phone to see if she replied, the replaying the conversation at 2 a.m. wondering what she meant by that one word. That is a man being swept away by the flood, the man Machiavelli described. The man with he prepared himself before the flood came, so when it came, he did not drown. It directed Italiano, and she felt a difference. Not with her eyes, with something older and deeper than eyes. Something her biology was running before she even knew his name. In the next segment, we go inside the first and most dangerous piece of this principle. The thing Machiavelli called the mask. Not the fake smile. Not the performance. The real mask. The one that, when worn correctly, does not hide who you are. It reveals Italiano, and it will change how you walk into every room for the rest of your life. Stay with me. Stay with me. Let me tell you about a mask. Not the kind you wear to a costume party. Not the kind politicians put on during election season. Not the fake smile your coworker gives you on Monday morning. I'm talking about the kind of mask Machiavelli spent years studying in the courts of Florence and Rome. The kind worn by the most powerful men in history. It is not made of material or paint or performance. It is made of awareness. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Now, most people read that line and think it is about deception, about hiding, about pretending to be something you are not. And that is exactly the wrong reading. That is the surface reading. The reading that keeps men weak. Here is what he actually meant. Every human being you meet is doing two things at the same time. They are seeing what is in front of them, and they are feeling what is underneath. These are two completely different experiences. And most men only think about the first one. They think about how they look, what to say, how to stand, whether their shirt is right, whether their teeth are white enough. They are managing the surface, the appearance, what everyone sees. But Machiavelli was not interested in appearance. He was interested in the gap between what people see and what they feel, because that gap is where all power lives. Here is a practical example. Think of a man who is nervous inside, heart racing, palms wet, thoughts scattered. But on his face, Teddy is calm, his voice is steady. His movements are slow. His eyes do not dart around the room looking for reassurance. The people around him see Comte feel calm. They trust him. Now think of a man who is fine inside Nouriel Nerbes, but on his face there is eagerness. He smiles too fast. He talks too much. He nods before you finish your sentence. He is performing friendliness, and everyone around him sees friendly but feels something slightly off, something they cannot name but cannot ignore. The first man understood the mask. The second man did not. Machiavelli would say, the first man had begun to understand Virtù, not because he was hiding something, but because he understood that what you project is a choice, and most men never make that choice consciously. Whose leak, whatever they feel inside, pours out automatically, unfiltered, uncontrolled, and she reads every drop of it. Now let us bring this directly into attraction. When you approach a woman you find beautiful, something happens inside your body that you did not choose. Your nervous system fires. Adrenaline moves. Your chest tightens slightly. This is biology. This is normal. This is not the problem. The problem is what happens next. Most men let that internal signal run their external behavior. The voice goes up slightly. The words come faster. The laugh is a little too loud. The compliment comes a little too early. And she does not consciously think he is nervous. Her body just registers something that feels like chasing. And the moment she feels chased, the game is already over. Not because she is cruel, not because she is playing games, but because her own biology, just as old and just as automatic as yours, responds to pursuit with distance. It is not personal. It is sentient. Machiavelli understood this pattern completely. He wrote about it in the context of princes and their subjects, but the psychology is identical. He said that men who display their desires openly invite others to use those desires against them. At the moment your want is visible, it becomes a weakness someone else can exploit, even without meaning to. So what is the solution? Is it to feel nothing, to become cold, to pretend you do not find her attractive? No, that is not the mask. That is just a different kind of leak. The mask Machiavelli described is not about suppressing what you feel. It is about choosing what you reveal and when. It is about having a delay between the internal and the external. A pause. A filter. A space where you are in charge of the signal you send. Here is what this looks like in a real conversation. She says something that genuinely makes you laugh. Not a polite laugh. A real one. The mask does not mean you sit there stone-faced trying to look cool. You laughed, but you let the laugh land, and then you let it go. You do not keep the smile going too long, trying to show her you enjoyed it. You do not say, "Oh my God, that is so funny. I love your sense of humor." You laugh, you return to stillness, and you move on. That small thing, that return to stillness, that is the mask working. Because what she experiences in that moment is a man who is present enough to genuinely react, but not so hungry for connection that he performs his reaction for her benefit. And that combination, real but contained, present but not desperate, is one of the most quietly powerful things a human being can demonstrate. Machiavelli wrote that the prince must know how to use both the nature of the beast and the nature of man. The beast reacts. The man decides. And the most attractive version of any human being is the one who is both running at the same time, feeling fully and choosing carefully. Now, here is where this mask principle goes deeper, because we have only talked about the surface layer of it. There is a second layer, and this one is where most men completely fall apart. It is not about managing your face, or your voice, or your body language. It is about managing the story you are telling yourself while the conversation is happening. Because you are always running a story. Always. And that story is the real mask, or the real leak, depending on what it says. In the next segment, we go inside that story. We pull it apart. We show you exactly what Machiavelli's most dangerous insight means. For the voice inside your head, the one she cannot hear, but somehow always feels, you are not going to want to miss this. You know, the one. The voice that starts talking. The moment you see someone you are attracted to. The voice that runs commentary on everything happening in real time like a sports announcer who has had too much coffee. She looked away. Does that mean she is not interested? Was that too long a pause? Should I ask a question now? What if she thinks I am boring? That guy over there is taller. Why did I wear this shirt? That voice, that endless, exhausting, relentless voice. And here is what nobody ever tells you about it. She cannot hear a single word it says, but she feels every single word it says. This sounds impossible. It sounds like something vague and spiritual that does not belong in a real conversation about attraction. But Machiavelli would not let you dismiss it that easily, because he studied this exact phenomenon in the courts of powerful men, and he gave it a very specific name. He called it the internal state of the prince. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler's greatest enemy is rarely an outside army. It is rarely a rival, or a conspiracy, or a sudden disaster. He wrote that the greatest enemy of any prince is the chaos inside his own mind, because a prince who is uncertain inside will make uncertain decisions, and uncertain decisions create the appearance of weakness, and the appearance of weakness invites attack from every direction. Now replace the word prince with the word man, and replace the word attack with the word disinterest. A man who is uncertain inside will send uncertain signals, and uncertain signals are not mysterious. They are not intriguing. They are not attractive. They are just uncomfortable to be around. She will not be able to explain why she lost interest. She will just feel a vague sense of unease around you, that she will interpret as incompatibility. But it was never incompatibility. It was your internal voice running a story that your body was quietly broadcasting on every channel at once. So what is the story your internal voice is telling? Most men, without realizing it, are running one of two stories during every interaction with a woman they find attractive. The first story is the approval story. It sounds like this. I need her to like me. I hope I'm doing this right. I wonder what she thinks of me. Please let this go well. Please let her laugh. Please let her be impressed. Everything in this story is pointed outward. Everything is waiting for a reaction to tell you whether you are okay. The second story is the fear story. It sounds like this. This is probably not going to work. She is out of my league. Something is going to go wrong. I always mess this up. She is going to lose interest any second now. Everything in this story is pointed toward failure before it happens. Both of these stories do the same thing. They make you a passenger in your own interaction. You are sitting in the back seat watching the road go by, hoping someone else is steering, and she feels that immediately. Not because she is reading your mind, but because both of these stories produce the same physical outputs. Slightly tighter jaw, slightly faster speech, slightly less eye contact, slightly more laughter at things that are not funny. Small things. Tiny things. But she has been reading these signals her entire life, and she is fluent in every one of them. Machiavelli wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." What this means for you is this. The wise man catches his internal story before it takes over. The fool lets it run the entire conversation and then wonders why it went wrong at the end. So how do you change the story? This is where Machiavelli gets uncomfortable, because he does not offer comfort. He offers truth, and the truth is that you cannot change the story with affirmations. You cannot change it by telling yourself you are confident when you do not feel it. You cannot fake your way to a new internal state. The body always knows when the mind is lying to itself, and it broadcasts that lie louder than the truth. The only way to change the internal story is to change the question the story is trying to answer. Right now, your internal voice is asking, "Does she like me?" Machiavelli would tell you to burn that question to the ground, because it is the question of a man who has already handed his power to someone else. It is the question of a man who has made her the judge and himself the defendant. The new question, the one that rewrites the entire story, is this: is she someone I want to invest my time in? That is it. That single shift. From "does she like me" to "do I like her." It sounds small. It is not small. It is everything. Because the moment you genuinely make that shift, your entire internal experience changes. You stop performing and start observing. You stop hoping she approves and start genuinely evaluating whether she is worth your attention. You stop being the man on trial and become the man on the bench. Machiavelli described this as the difference between the prince who rules and the prince who is ruled. One is always in reaction. The other is always in assessment. And the one in assessment always holds more power. Now here's the part that will make you uncomfortable, because I need to tell you something about this new question that most men do not want to hear. To genuinely ask, "Do I like her?" instead of "Does she like me?" you need to have something worth returning to. You need a life that is full enough that she is an addition to it, not the answer to it. You need, in Machiavelli's words, to have already built your walls before the flood arrives. And most men have not built those walls. They are waiting for her to be the wall. In the next segment, we go into exactly how you build them, and how, once they are built, you will never walk into a room the same way again. This is the part that changes everything. I want to tell you about two princes. Machiavelli wrote about both of them. Not in the same chapter, but if you read The Prince carefully, you see them both living inside the same pages, like two sides of the same coin. The first prince had everything: a kingdom, an army, wealth, title, power, land stretching further than he could ride in a day. Women wanted to be near him. Men wanted to be him. Every room he walked into reorganized itself around his presence automatically. The second prince also had everything: the same kingdom, the semi-army, the same wealth and title and power and lands. But he spent every waking hour worried about losing it. He chased the approval of his advisors. He changed his decisions based on who complained loudest. He gave away pieces of himself, constantly trying to keep everyone happy. And slowly, quietly, everyone around him stopped respecting him. Not because he became poor or ugly, but because he became needy. And neediness, Machiavelli wrote, is the one quality that destroys a man faster than any enemy ever could. Here is the difference between those two princes. It was not their circumstances. Their circumstances were identical. It was what they had built inside themselves before the circumstances arrived. Machiavelli called this the foundation. He wrote that a prince who builds his power on the favor of others builds on sand. Because the favor of others is borrowed, it can be taken back at any moment without notice and without reason. But a prince who builds his power on his own vertex, on his own inner force and self-possession, builds on rock. And when the storms come, and they always come, the rock does not move. Now I need you to stop thinking about princes and kingdoms for a moment, because I know what you came here for. You came here to understand attraction, to understand why some men walk into rooms and pull energy toward them like gravity, while other men disappear into the wallpaper. And the answer, the real answer, is exactly what Machiavelli was describing. The men who are magnetic are not magnetic because of what they have. They are magnetic because of what they have built inside themselves. Let me be specific, because this channel does not deal in vague inspiration. We deal in mechanics. There are 3 internal foundations that Machiavelli's principle points to directly. 3 things you must build before any conversation, any approach, any interaction with any woman you are attracted to. Without these 3 things, every technique you learn is a house built on sand. With them, you need almost no technique at all. The first foundation is a defined purpose. Machiavelli was obsessed with men who had a clear direction. He wrote repeatedly about the danger of the prince who drifts, who waits to see which way the wind blows before deciding what to do. A man with no defined purpose is invisible in the most dangerous way. Not invisible like nobody sees him. Invisible like nobody feels him. She can look directly at him and feel nothing because there is nothing coming from him. No direction, no pull, no gravity. But a man who knows exactly what he is building, what he is working toward, that man has a current running through him that other people feel before he says a word. She does not need to know the details of what he is building. She just needs to feel that something is being built, that there is somewhere this man is going, that getting close to him means being near something moving. Purpose is not a job title. It is not an income level. It is the feeling of a man who is genuinely alive inside his own life. And you either have it or you do not. And if you do not, no amount of clever conversation will cover its absence. The second foundation is the ability to tolerate discomfort. Machiavelli wrote that fortune tests every man, not once, not occasionally, but constantly and without mercy. And the men who survive those tests are not the ones who avoided discomfort. They are the ones who walked directly into it and did not flinch. In the context of attraction, discomfort shows up in specific ways. The silence that stretches a little too long. The moment she says something slightly cold and you have to decide whether to chase warmth or hold your ground. The moment you genuinely do not know if she is interested, and you have to sit with that uncertainty without letting it rattle you. Most men cannot sit with that uncertainty. It feels like dying. So they fill it. They over-explain. They add one more compliment. They send one more message. They keep poking the silence, trying to get a reaction that makes them feel safe again. And every single time they do that, she feels the desperation underneath it. Not because she is looking for it, but because it is impossible to miss. The man who can sit in discomfort without flinching communicates something so rare that it registers as almost shocking to the people around him. He communicates that he is okay, that he does not need this moment to go a certain way in order to remain whole, that he has, in Machiavelli's words, built his walls before the flood. The third foundation is genuine, selective standards. This is the hardest one, and it is the one that will make some of you uncomfortable, because it requires you to be honest about something most men avoid entirely. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who accepts every alliance, who says yes to every offer, who opens his gates to every visitor, will eventually be overtaken from the inside. That true strength is not in how much you accept. It is in how carefully you choose. Most men have no real standards for women. They think they do. They will tell you they have standards. But their behavior tells a different story. Their behavior says that any woman who shows them interest immediately becomes worth pursuing. That the bar for their investment is simply her willingness to receive it. And she feels this immediately. Because a man with no real standards is a man who has not decided what he wants. And a man who has not decided what he wants is a man who is not yet finished becoming himself. But the man who has genuine standards, who is genuinely evaluating her the same way she is evaluating him, who is genuinely asking himself whether this particular person fits into the life he's building, that man creates something. He creates the feeling that his attention is worth something, and the moment she feels that his attention is worth something, everything changes. She stops being the one being pursued and starts being the one who wonders if she is making the cut. Machiavelli understood that power is never given. It is always felt first, before the words, before the proof, before the evidence. It is felt. And the three foundations we just talked about are what create that feeling from the inside out. Purpose, tolerance for discomfort, genuine selective standards. Build these three things, and the last segment of this video will hit you differently than it would have 20 minutes ago. Because the final principle we are about to discuss is not about what you do in the conversation. It is about what you do after it ends. And it is the peace that makes everything else permanent. The final segment is where Machiavelli's deadliest principle completes itself. Do not go anywhere.